Hi, my name is Nico Garcia and I am of EC31 from DLSU. Today I am going to show you our first experiment of our Power Electronics class. Experiment 1, Introduction to Circuit Modeling. Open the OrCAD Capture PSpice and click New Project. Choose the analog or mix 80 and name it as Experiment 1. Click OK. Choose Create a Blank Project. Click OK. Click Place, then PSpice component, then Search. Type S-Brake in the search box and click Enter. The component should appear and drop it in the working page. Click Edit, then PSpice Model. Set R on to 0.001 ohms, R off to 10 mega ohms, V on to 1 volt, and V off to 0 volts. Click Place, then PSpice component, then Source, then Voltage Sources, then Pulse, and drop the component in the working page. In the right pane, click the Place Part icon. Type R/analog in the search box and click Enter. Then drop the component in the working page. Add another component, VDC source, in the working page. Arrange the components and connect them as shown in the figure. Use the place wire icon in the right pane to connect the components. Make sure the circuit has a ground. In the V-pulse, double-click the V1 and set the value to 0. Set the other parameters for V-pulse as shown in the figure. Set the value of R load to 2 and Vs to 24 volts. Create new simulation profile and name it as Experiment 1. Set the analysis type to time domain and run to time to 80 microseconds. Click Apply and Save. Click the Run Spice button. It can be observed that the R1 is in phase with the V control. the pulse for V control ranges from 0 volts to 5 volts, while for R1, the pulse ranges from 23.88 volts to 24 volts. Create another project, but this time use MOSFET IRF150 as a switch. It can be observed that the V control is in phase with the R load. The pulse for V control ranges from 0 volts to 35 volts, while for R load, the pulse ranges from 0 volts to 24 volts. This experiment was done by using the ORCAD PSpice software. The operation of a voltage-controlled switch and a transistor as a switch was observed. For the first part of the experiment, a voltage-controlled switch was built. The voltage control or pulse input and the voltage load was compared. It was observed that the pulse for V control ranges from 0 volts to 5 volts, while for the voltage at the R load, the pulse ranges from 23.88 volts to 24 volts. Both V control and R load were in phase as they turn on and off. For the second part of the experiment, a transistor as a switch was built. An IRF150 MOSFET replaced the voltage-controlled switch. Both the V control and the voltage in the R load are in phase. This experiment observed the effects of a switch in a circuit by building and comparing both a voltage-controlled switch and a transistor as a switch. It can be concluded that the switches affect how the voltage and current across the load behaves. The comparison between the two switches is that a voltage-controlled switch changes the voltage drop across a load, while for a transistor as a switch, it completely turns on and off on the operation of the load.